Welcome back, everyone. In this explainer, we're taking a deep dive into what is, honestly, one of the most defining MMORPGs of the 2000s, Knight Online. Developed by Mgame Corporation and Noah System, this wasn't just a game for a lot of us. It was a global phenomenon that literally consumed thousands of hours of our lives. It tested our mathematical limits and, wildly enough, eventually became the center of a massive corporate scandal. Today, we're going to unpack all of it. The lore, the absolutely devastating impact of the Koxp cheating software, and the shocking, basically true crime corporate drama that almost brought the whole thing crashing down.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because really, how does a legendary 2002 MMORPG end up in a massive corporate sabotage lawsuit? That's exactly the question we have to answer today. I mean, we all know the memories, right? The late-night boss hunts, the endless, agonizing grinding, that pure adrenaline rush of a rare item drop. But while we were all focused on the glowing screens and internet cafes and bedrooms around the world, a super dark corporate betrayal was brewing behind the scenes between the game's developer and its publisher. We're going to trace that crazy shift from innocent online battles to actual real-world corporate sabotage. But first, to really understand the stakes of that betrayal, we kind of need to understand the world they built. Section 1. Birth of the Legend and the Game World. Just to give you an idea of the absolute sheer scale we're talking about here, Knight Online didn't just find some small niche audience. It absolutely exploded across more than 80 countries. Operating on both free-to-play and pay-to-play models depending on where you lived, it amassed millions of dedicated hardcore players globally. It became a cultural touchstone. But as you'll see, that massive, largely unregulated global scale also made it a prime target for exploitation. We'll definitely get to that later.
So the core of the entire game was fueled by this massive division. You had to choose a side, the human kingdom of Morad or the orc nation of Karus. And this wasn't just some purely cosmetic, superficial choice. Your race dictated your available character models, like the barbarian for Morad or the arcturek for Karus, and it fundamentally shaped your identity in the game. From there, you picked your class, and boom, that decision basically locked you into a very specific, vital role within the game's absolutely brutal ecosystem.
Let's break those classes down, starting with the heavy hitter, the warrior. Whether you were a berserker hero for Karus or a blade master for Morad, you were the ultimate close combat tank. I mean, with incredibly high health points and massive defense, whenever a huge boss needed to be taken down, the warrior was literally the very first character called to the front lines. They provided this super reliable, fixed, steady stream of combo power that made them the absolute vanguard of any party.
Next up, we have the rogue. This class was the absolute master of speed and skill. It really appealed to players who loved high-octane mechanics and just lethal precision. If you specialized as an assassin, like a Shadow Vane or a Khazar Hood, you relied on these devastatingly fast combo mechanics to deal massive burst damage in mere seconds. Or, going the archer route gave you the longest attack range in the entire game. You definitely weren't the tankiest, but man, you were undeniably deadly.
Then there was the mage. Now, some players totally underestimated this class because they had exceptionally low defense and health, but honestly, that was a huge mistake. Wielding flame, glacier, or lightning, mages were incredibly devastating spellcasters. They completely compensated for their fragility with massive area of effect, or AoE, damage. Actually, this huge AoE magic was historically used and, let's be real, sometimes heavily abused for farming massive groups of enemies all at once. Plus, their unique teleportation skills let them instantly pull party members right out of danger.
And of course, no party could even hope to survive without a priest. Paladins and Shadow Knights were the absolute undisputed backbone of the game's social and combat mechanics. As an intelligence priest, you provided critical healing, high defense, and those indispensable buffs everyone begged for. But there was also this fascinating subculture of players who built battle priests. They'd completely sacrifice their high defense to deal incredible melee damage, essentially flipping the game's mechanics entirely on their head.
Now, a bit later on, the game introduced these incredibly unique support classes, the Portuni for Morad and the Kurien for Karus. These guys were dark magic users, and they added a super deep strategic layer to battles. They focused on using poisons, stunning enemies, and completely debuffing enemy defenses. They naturally had lower defense themselves, but they possessed this crazy devil mode transformation that let them act as short-term tanks in a pinch. But look, mastering all these deep, strategic layers meant spending literally thousands of hours in-game. A grind so intense, it actually gave rise to a massive underground cheating culture.
Building these characters all the way to level 83 was practically a science. It's a true testament to the intense mathematical devotion players poured into mastering their builds. For example, allocating exactly 83 points into Berserker, 55 into Defense, and 10 into Masters unlocked crucial skills like Gain for 15 extra strength. And then there was the ultimate level 83 skill, Battle Cry, which astonishingly added 15 to every single stat for your entire party. That set up the devastating Cry Echo attack for 300% damage. It required intense, meticulous planning.
Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds, the timeline of success.
The journey officially began in June 2002 when the demo beta launched under the name Night Empire, and it featured just one legendary server, Ares. By 2004, it was officially renamed Night Online, fully launching with 4 iconic servers that any veteran player will instantly recognize: Ares, Diez, Baramis, and Ziganon. The game just kept evolving, most notably with the massive new Morad update in 2007, which completely overhauled and expanded the game's central, bustling trading hub.
And this brilliantly illustrates one of the most nostalgic shifts in the game's history, the legendary 1299 patch. Before this huge update, players roamed the original classic maps of Breath and Piana. But patch 1299 wiped those completely away, replacing them with the sprawling landscapes of Luferson Castle for the orcs and El Morad for the humans. It completely changed the geography of millions of players' memories, basically closing one massive chapter of the game and opening another.
Alongside those expanding maps, the game demanded an ever-increasing grind. When that original 2002 beta launched, the absolute maximum level you could reach was 60. Over the years, that ceiling was pushed higher and higher, eventually hitting level 83. That jump represented thousands upon thousands of hours of gameplay. In fact, the grind was so brutally punishing that a massive portion of the player base turned to third-party macro software, widely known as KOLXP, just to automate their characters. KOLXP became an absolute epidemic. It fundamentally altered the game's economy and really shattered community trust.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Great Betrayal.
Now, let's slow down for a second, because in 2012, the community was rocked by an unprecedented legal battle. Mgame, the developers of the game, filed a massive lawsuit against their own Western publisher, K2 Network. Now, the official statement cited severe irregularities, but you guys, that legal jargon masked a truly devastating corporate betrayal that genuinely threatened to permanently unplug the servers of this beloved game forever.
So, the crucial point is understanding exactly what K2 Network was accused of doing, because the audacity is just staggering. According to the lawsuit, K2 Network literally stole Night Online's proprietary source files. And to cover their tracks, they severed the VPN connection so the developers at Mgame couldn't even access their own servers. Behind Mgame's back, K2 was allegedly making secret, under-the-table, real money deals with certain Turkish players, selling highly valuable in-game items directly for cash. On top of that, they were accused of turning a total blind eye to the massive KOXP botting epidemic we just talked about. Why? Because those cheating accounts were still paying for premium services. They were sacrificing the game's integrity for profit. It was just total unbelievable sabotage.
Section 4. A New Era and Survival. So, what happened? Well, the intense legal battle eventually reached a conclusion with a mutual settlement, and the outcome was huge. The rogue publisher, K2 Network, was completely forced out of the picture. The precious operating license for Night Online was rescued and officially handed over to a new publisher, NTT Game. This critical handover was literally a breath of life for the game. It stabilized the servers, it restored developer control, and it essentially saved the entire world of Morad and Karus from being permanently deleted from internet history. Which leaves us with this final, honestly remarkable question. How does a game survive an absolute epidemic of KOXP cheating, and its own publisher deliberately sabotaging it and stealing its code, only to keep millions of players logging in decades later? I mean, it really speaks to the indestructible nostalgia, the brilliant underlying class mechanics, and the undeniable die-hard loyalty of the Night Online community. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes the world the players build together is just stronger than the corporations that try to tear it apart. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next deep dive.